The train rattled down the tracks on a chilly evening, its windows fogged by the breath of tired passengers. Among the scattered crowd sat Daniel, a man in his late 30s, his dark eyes carrying the weight of sleepless nights and silent battles. He was a single dad, raising his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, entirely on his own since his wife's sudden passing 3 years ago. Life hadn't been kind to him. His work as a delivery driver barely paid enough to cover rent and Lily's school fees. Each morning, he woke before dawn, rushed to drop Lily at school, and then worked long hours to keep food on the table. Still, no matter how drained he was, he never let his daughter see the cracks in his spirit. For her, he was strong. For her, he kept going. That night, Daniel was on the last train home after a long shift. His lunchbox was empty except for crumbs, his clothes smelled faintly of gasoline, and his hands were calloused from endless days on the road. He sat quietly, staring out the window, thinking of how Lily would already be asleep by the time he got home. He hated that. He hated missing bedtime stories, her soft giggles, and the way she hugged him tightly every night before drifting off. As the train screeched to a halt at the next station, a group of men climbed aboard, loud, unruly, and already reeking of alcohol. Their laughter echoed through the nearly empty car as they shoved each other and sprawled across the seats. Most passengers lowered their eyes, hoping not to draw attention. Among them was a young woman, no more than 23, sitting alone with a backpack on her lap. She wore a faded sweater, her hands gripping the straps nervously. Daniel noticed her the moment the men's voices grew louder, their eyes darting toward her like vultures circling prey. At first, it began with whispers and mocking laughter. One of them leaned too close, asking where she was headed, why she was alone. She looked away, her body tensing, but that only fueled their cruel amusement. Another tried to touch her arm, and she jerked back, her eyes wide with fear. Daniel's stomach tightened. He looked around. Every other passenger pretended not to see. Some stared at their phones, some kept their eyes glued to the floor. The silence was deafening, broken only by the men's taunts and the girl's trembling voice as she tried to say, "Please, leave me alone." Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. He thought of Lily. He imagined her, years from now, riding home from school, vulnerable and alone. What if no one stood up for her? What if the world looked away the way these passengers were doing right now? Something inside him snapped. Without thinking twice, Daniel rose from his seat. His legs were heavy from exhaustion, but his voice carried a strength he didn't know he had. "That's enough." The car fell silent for a moment, the metallic screech of the train the only sound. The men turned to him, sneering. "What's it to you, old man?" One spat, standing up. He was taller, broader, but Daniel didn't flinch. "She said leave her alone," Daniel said firmly, his voice steady. "So back off." The young woman looked at him, her eyes brimming with tears, not just of fear, but relief. For the first time since they boarded, she wasn't alone. The men laughed, circling him like wolves. One shoved his shoulder. "Or what, you gonna fight us all?" Daniel swallowed hard. He had no weapon, no backup, nothing but his conviction. His hands shook, not from fear for himself, but from the thought of Lily. If he got hurt, who would take care of her? Still, he squared his shoulders. "If you want trouble," he said, locking eyes with the ringleader, "then you'll have to go through me first. But you're not touching her again." There was something in his tone, a quiet, unyielding fire, that made even the drunk men hesitate. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, one of the other passengers, emboldened by Daniel's courage, stood up. "He's right, leave her alone." Another followed, then another. Soon, the men realized the tide had shifted. Their arrogance cracked under the weight of dozens of eyes finally refusing to look away. Muttering curses, they stumbled back, exiting the train at the next stop with mocking laughs that didn't hide their retreat. When the doors closed, silence filled the car again. The girl was shaking, clutching her backpack. Daniel sat back down beside her, not too close, his voice gentle now. "Are you okay?" She nodded slowly, her lips trembling. "Thank you. I didn't know what to do." Daniel gave a small, tired smile. "You don't have to thank me. I just did what anyone should have done." But she shook her head. "No, nobody else moved, only you." Her words struck him deeper than she could have known. For so long, Daniel had felt invisible, just another tired worker the world overlooked. But in that moment, to her, he was a shield. To her, he mattered. When the train reached his stop, Daniel stood and gave her a reassuring nod. "Take care of yourself." She hesitated, then whispered, "You too." As Daniel stepped onto the platform, he felt the cool night air rush against his face. He was still just a struggling single dad, with bills waiting at home and a little girl asleep in bed. But tonight, he had been more than his struggles. Tonight, he had shown his daughter, though she wasn't there to see, that kindness and courage were worth more than fear. And as he walked home, exhausted but proud, he thought of Lily. Tomorrow, when she asked why he looked so tired, he wouldn't tell her about the danger or the fear. He would just smile and say, because sometimes, being brave for someone else is the best kind of tired there is. And that night, though the world still weighed heavy on his shoulders, Daniel felt just a little bit lighter.